In a medical tent amidst the Syrian desert, Sarah Collins, a 39-year-old army doctor, had just stitched up a child's wound when an email arrived. The subject line from her husband, David: "We're done." 12 years of marriage shattered in 3 lines. He'd filed for divorce, drained their joint account of $100,000, and was living with Claire in their Seattle home. "Happiness is the most fragile thing, especially when you're not there to hold it," Sarah muttered, eyes stinging but hands wiping the laptop screen. She stared at their family photo, David's distant smile, and wept silently, the distant bombs drowning her pain. But Sarah didn't break. She typed back one word, "Noted," then returned to her shift, her gaze steely. On the edge of life and death, this betrayal wasn't just a cut, it was a spark waiting to ignite. What led to this moment? And what will Sarah do to reclaim what's hers? As the dim tent light fell on her face, Sarah let memories pull her back to the early days, where it all began, and to the signs she'd tried to ignore, tiny cracks in a wall before it crumbled. They met on an autumn evening in 2010 at an outdoor concert in Seattle. Sarah, a fresh out of med school intern, stood alone under the stage lights, swept up by the guitar's hum. David, tall with a confident smile, approached, holding 2 cups of coffee, offering her one. "You look like someone who needs something warmer than the night breeze," he said. It was cheesy, but his eyes were honest, and Sarah smiled, for the first time in months of grueling work. They talked until late, about music, dreams. She wanted to save lives, he wanted to craft stories through graphic design. Their love bloomed like wildflowers in a field, vibrant but fragile. In 2012, they married in a small church, just family and a few friends. Sarah wore a simple white dress, David's tie was crooked, making her laugh as she fixed it. "You're my whole world," he whispered during their first dance, and she believed him, though deep down, she knew love was never a permanent promise. In 2015, they bought a house in Seattle, a 2-story with big windows overlooking Puget Sound. Sarah's name was on the deed, thanks to a VA loan from her Navy service. David didn't complain, but sometimes she caught him staring at the paperwork with a distant look, as if he didn't belong. "This is our home, right?" she'd asked, half joking. He'd smile, hug her, but the embrace lacked warmth. On the surface, life was fine: movie nights, weekend hikes, David brewing her morning coffee. But the military kept calling, and Sarah never said no. Iraq, Afghanistan, Haiti, she went everywhere, carrying her mission to heal and a vague fear that each departure left a gap in David's heart. Trouble brewed about 2 years ago, like cold drafts slipping through a door. David stopped asking about her work, instead grumbling, "You're always gone, Sarah. I'm tired of waiting." She tried explaining that saving lives was part of who she was, that the Navy was her second family, but he'd just nod, his eyes empty. Then came small, sharp changes. He'd go meet clients on weekends, coming back with unfamiliar perfume. His laptop had a new password, and when she casually asked, he laughed awkwardly, "Just work security." Sarah wasn't the type to snoop or interrogate, but she wasn't blind. Once, she saw him texting at midnight, the screen's glow lighting his face in the dark. "Who's that?" she asked lightly. "No one," he said, too quickly. She didn't press, but her heart started counting the cracks. The unease grew, especially during their last fight before her deployment. On a rainy evening, Sarah packed for Syria while David sat on the couch, silently sipping beer. "You choose work over me," he said suddenly, voice icy. Sarah paused, looking at him. "David, I'm not choosing anything. This is what I have to do." He stood, yelling, "Have to? Or you just don't want to be here with me?" His words stung like arrows, and for the first time, Sarah felt guilt. She apologized, though she knew she wasn't wrong, and when he turned away, she saw a chasm they couldn't bridge. That night, lying beside him, she felt like she was sleeping next to a stranger. When her plane took off days later, Sarah gazed at Seattle through the window, wondering if she still had a home to return to. But Sarah wasn't one to surrender to fate. The military taught her that battlefields weren't just bullets and bombs, they were silent wars in the mind. She started preparing, not out of distrust for David, but from a gut instinct, like sensing danger before an explosion. She opened a separate account at a small bank, funneling part of her paycheck there, just enough to go unnoticed. Just in case, she told herself, but she knew it was more. She backed up key documents, house deed, military records, medical degrees, and sent them to a safe deposit box at her sister Lisa's place in Tacoma. "Hold these for me, no questions," she told Lisa with a strained smile. Lisa nodded, not prying, but her eyes were worried. Then she installed security cameras at home, discreet ones linked to her phone. She told David it was to protect the place when we're both away, and he shrugged, unsuspecting. But Sarah knew if she ever needed the truth, those cameras would be her eyes. She didn't want to believe David would betray her, but she wasn't naive enough to think things would stay the same. If happiness is fragile, at least I'll hold on to what's mine, she thought, setting up the camera app, her eyes harder than ever. Back in the medical tent tonight, Sarah sat on her cot, the flashlight casting her shadow long across the canvas. David's email still burned like a bullet in her chest, but the memories weren't just pain. They reminded her she'd prepared, even unconsciously, for this moment. The account, the documents, the cameras, they weren't just tools, they were armor she'd forged herself. 6 weeks passed, and between emergency surgeries and blaring alarms, Sarah tried to bury her pain under her white coat, but it smoldered, like embers under ash. She didn't contact David, didn't ask about Claire or the vanished $100,000. But her silence wasn't surrender, it was the calm before the storm. And then, on a dusty morning, the storm hit, bringing a truth sharp as a blade and a secret that stopped her heart. That day, Sarah was checking emails in the comms tent, one of the few places with a stable signal. Amid medical reports and letters from colleagues, a bank alert popped up, cold as a bullet. Their joint account had $27 left. She frowned, opened the app, and felt the ground shake, though no bombs fell outside. The $50,000 savings, scraped together over years for a dream vacation or quiet retirement, was gone. Transactions scrolled like a verdict, small withdrawals over 2 months, then a massive transfer, $49,800, to an unknown account, 3 days after David's divorce email. Sarah gripped her phone, breath ragged. "David," she whispered, not with love, but with a rising anger, sharp and icy. She didn't wait. Back in her tent, Sarah opened the security camera app she'd set up for their Seattle home before deploying. The footage loaded, painfully clear. The house, where she'd picked paint colors, hung curtains, planted flowers, now felt like someone else's. Claire, the woman David chose over her, walked through the living room, wearing Sarah's favorite navy sweater, the one she'd said matched her eyes. Claire held a coffee mug, sat on the sofa, and smiled at someone off-screen. Then David appeared, not the husband who'd vowed forever, but a stranger, holding papers, talking to a silver-haired man in a black suit, eyes sharp as a knife. Sarah zoomed in, capturing every detail, though each second sliced her pride. The man, she later learned, was Ethan, a financial broker with a smile as fake as the contracts he carried. Sarah rewound the footage, heart heavy. A week earlier, she saw David and Ethan signing papers at the dining table, the one she'd sat at to write him letters between shifts. She turned on audio, hearing Ethan say, "One more signature, and the house gets a quick appraisal. The company's ready to pay $450,000, cash." David nodded, asking, "When's it done?" Ethan grinned, "Before she's back." "Soldiers are busy, right?" Sarah clenched her fists, nails digging into her palms. $450,000? Her house was worth at least $700,000. She opened her laptop, dug into bank records, and found worse. David had forged her signature to refinance the house, borrowing $400,000 from a shady finance company. The money went to the same account that got the $49,800 from their savings. This wasn't just emotional betrayal, it was a calculated heist, planned the moment she left. But the truth cut deeper. Checking transaction details, Sarah found a $10,000 transfer from the refinanced loan to a name she never expected, Lisa Collins, her sister. Her heart stopped. Lisa, her rock, who held her safe deposit box, who'd said, "You're my whole world." Sarah called immediately, ignoring the hour. Over a crackling line, Lisa's voice trembled. "Sarah, I'm sorry. David said it was an investment for a hospital, that you approved." "I didn't know." Lisa sobbed, explaining David convinced her to sign a financial support contract, actually funneling money into a fake fund to launder the loan. Sarah sank onto her cot, the ground collapsing beneath her. Not just David and Claire, even Lisa, her most trusted, had unwittingly joined their scheme. "I didn't mean it, Sarah, I swear," Lisa cried, but Sarah said, "Don't worry. I'll handle it." She hung up, not out of anger, but to save her strength for the bigger storm. The pain hit like a tsunami, drowning her in chaos. She pictured David and Ethan laughing in the home she'd built with sweat, Claire wearing her clothes as if erasing her, and Lisa, with blind kindness, aiding them. Sarah stepped outside, letting Syria's sandy wind lash her face. She wanted to scream, to call David and demand why he'd turned her into a stranger in her own life. But she didn't. The battlefield taught her emotions don't beat enemies, strategy does. That night, Sarah didn't sleep. Under a flashlight's glow, she wrote in her journal, each word bleeding, "I save lives in war, but not my own trust. David took money, Claire took my home, Lisa took my faith, but they won't take me." She underlined me, a reminder. She recalled Michael, a teammate who'd said she was stronger than anyone he knew. "He's right," she whispered, eyes glinting in the dark. Sarah began planning, step by step, like charting a cure for a terminal case. She wouldn't let David or Ethan win. And Lisa, she'd protect her, though her heart ached at the truth. The storm had begun, but Sarah wasn't afraid. She knew, in the ashes of betrayal, a fire burned, her fire, ready to blaze for justice. The Syrian dust still lashed the medical tent, but Sarah no longer felt cold. After the shock of discovering Lisa's unwitting role in the forged $400,000 loan, Sarah refused to drown in anger or despair. She stood, opened her laptop, and began plotting, step by step, like charting a surgery in a critical case. This was no longer personal, it was a mission, and Sarah, the 39-year-old army doctor, knew victory demanded clarity, allies, and a heart strong enough to face the dark. The next morning, in a quiet corner of the comms tent, Sarah emailed Rachel, a financial lawyer and trusted college friend. Subject line, "Help me, urgent." The message was concise: forged refinancing, drained savings, and a scheme to sell the house below market value. She attached fresh security footage, carefully chosen for clarity, showing Ethan and David scheming like smugglers in the shadows. "Rachel, I need to freeze that money before it's gone," she wrote, then paused, fingers hovering. She wanted to mention Lisa, the gut-wrenching truth that her sister was tricked into signing a money laundering deal, but stopped. "Not yet," she whispered. Lisa didn't need more weight, Sarah would shield her, like she bandaged soldiers amid gunfire. Rachel replied within 2 hours, her tone brief but firm, "I'm on it. Send me your official signature for comparison. And Sarah, I'm proud you're not giving up." Sarah gave a faint smile, her first in weeks. She dug up an old military document in her email, with her clear signature, soft curves, unlike the stiff scrawl on the forged contract. She sent it, adding, "Check the company behind Ethan. I think it's bigger than David." Her instincts, sharp as a scalpel, told her Ethan wasn't alone. His words on video, "The company's ready to pay cash," hinted at a larger web, and Sarah was determined to unravel it. But she knew she needed more than a lawyer. She needed someone who understood the military, who got what she faced. During a break between shifts, Sarah sought Michael, a fellow medic she'd pulled from a burning armored truck in Iraq. Michael, whose eyes stayed bright no matter how grim the war, was checking gear at the camp's edge. "Need to talk," she called, voice low. Michael glanced at her, saw the gravity, and nodded. Under the camp's lone withered tree, Sarah spilled everything, the loan, the plot, and the silent ache of Lisa's betrayal. She didn't cry, but her voice wavered. "I don't want to lose everything, Michael. Not to them." Michael put a hand on her shoulder, steady as a vow. You're the strongest person I know, Sarah. I've got friends in military banking. Just tell me what I need to do. Emotion surged in Sarah, not weakness, but gratitude. Michael didn't make empty promises, he acted. Through military channels, he reached a finance officer, requesting a trace on the $400,000 loan transactions. Meanwhile, Sarah worked with Rachel via encrypted email, supplying more evidence, bank transaction logs, an email from David to Claire accidentally exposing plans, and a new detail from the footage. Ethan, in one recording, mentioned other deals in Pendleton and Bragg. Sarah frowned. Those were major military bases. They're not just targeting me, she wrote Rachel. Check if other soldiers got hit. She didn't know where it would lead, but her gut screamed she was brushing a bigger web. Each night, after grueling shifts, Sarah sat with her laptop, dissecting evidence like a detective. She no longer watched security footage to grieve, she hunted for cracks. One clip showed Ethan leaving a business card on the dining table, its logo faint but traceable, Coastal Trust, a finance company once probed for money laundering. Sarah sent it to Rachel with a note, they think I don't see. But I'm watching. A new strength surged, not just from anger, but clarity. She recalled operating on a young soldier's heart when everyone thought he'd die. She'd found the vein, stitched each suture, and he lived. This is surgery too, she told herself, and I won't let the patient die. The strongest emotion hit one night when Rachel emailed, Ethan's company is tied to 3 similar cases in California and Texas. All targeted deployed soldiers. FBI's watching. You sure you want to keep going? Sarah stared at the screen, breath slowing. She thought of Lisa, guilt-ridden in Tacoma, of other families who might be losing homes like her, of David, who once swore he loved her, now selling their life for pocket change. And she thought of herself, the woman who'd trembled reading the divorce email, now holding a torch to the truth. She replied, I'm not stopping. Send it all to the FBI. And Rachel, thanks. To bolster evidence, Sarah contacted an old teammate, Karen, who worked in military records. She asked Karen to check for other contracts in her name. Karen, with a warm laugh over the phone, said, once you lock on a target, no one escapes. 2 days later, Karen sent a find, a secondary account in Sarah's name at another bank, one she'd never opened. Another forgery, Sarah whispered, forwarding it to Rachel. She felt like she was playing chess with Ethan and David, and for the first time, she was a move ahead. But she wasn't always strong. One evening, under a rare moonbeam piercing the tent, Sarah opened an old phone video, her and David dancing by a lake on their wedding day. She let tears fall, not for regret, but for realizing she'd loved someone who no longer existed. Don't you dare go soft, she scolded herself, wiping her face, and added to her plan, contact FBI when back. Protect Lisa. Reclaim house. She didn't know what awaited in Seattle, but she knew one thing, the fire in her was now ablaze, and it would burn through every lie. The fire in Sarah no longer smoldered. It had become a wildfire, fierce and unstoppable, as she stepped off the plane in Seattle. Her military backpack weighed heavy on her shoulders, but her heart felt lighter than ever. The emails with Rachel, the nights analyzing evidence with Michael, and her vow to protect Lisa had forged a new version of her, not just an army doctor saving lives, but a warrior hunting justice. She didn't tell David she was back. No text, no call. Instead, she checked into a small hotel near the waterfront, watching the city lights ripple on the water, and whispered, my turn. David and Ethan's scheme, the forged $400,000 loan, the threatened house, and Lisa's entanglement in their darkness, would not end in their victory. Sarah was ready, and today, she'd let the truth speak, sharp as the scalpel she once wielded. Her first morning in America, Sarah met Rachel at a seaside cafe, where salt air mingled with coffee. Rachel, hair pulled high and eyes razor-sharp, slid a folder across the table. The FBI wants to talk, she said, voice low but firm. Coastal Trust, Ethan's company, didn't just target you. They've got a system, 15 military families, from San Diego to Norfolk, scammed the same way. Sarah flipped through the documents, seeing unfamiliar names bound by familiar pain, a sergeant who lost his home while in Iraq, a captain whose savings vanished during a Kuwait deployment. Her heart ached, not just for herself, but for others whose homes were stolen while they defended the country. They picked the wrong person to mess with, she said, eyes hard as steel. Rachel smiled, damn right. And you're the one to end this. The FBI meeting took place in a gray federal building downtown, cold but brimming with Sarah's hope. Agent Harper, a tall man with a deep voice, and Agent Lopez, with laser-sharp eyes, sat across from her. Sarah opened her laptop, presenting evidence like a doctor explaining a complex case, footage of Ethan and David plotting to sell the house, the forged contract with her fake signature, and transactions tied to Lisa. She detailed the dummy account and her suspicions of similar scams at Pendleton and Bragg. This isn't isolated, she said, voice calm but heavy. They targeted us because we're not home. But I'm here now. Harper nodded, scribbling notes. Ms. Collins, your evidence is the piece we needed. We've tracked Coastal Trust for a year, but nothing solid enough to crack their network. A jolt ran through Sarah, not victory, but realization of the stakes. She wasn't just fighting for her house or Lisa, but for strangers, soldiers who left families to serve, only to return empty-handed. Lopez leaned forward, we need you as a witness. Possibly for a confrontation. Sarah inhaled deeply, picturing David across from her, the man who'd once been her world, now complicit in a crime. I'm ready, she said, voice steady, though her heart pounded like a war drum. The FBI moved fast. 3 days later, Sarah stood behind one-way glass in the federal office, watching Ethan led into an interrogation room. He wore a gray suit, but his smug grin was gone, replaced by panic as Harper listed evidence, videos, transactions, and a turncoat Coastal Trust employee's testimony. Ethan tried to deflect, but each word tightened the noose. Then came David. He shuffled in, hair messy, eyes sunken, a far cry from the man who'd smirked in her home on camera. Harper cut straight, what do you know about the $400,000 loan? David stammered, claiming Ethan said it was legal, that he just wanted a fresh start. Sarah looked away, not from anger, but because she no longer knew this man. The peak came when Sarah was asked to confront David. She entered the room, their eyes met, and time seemed to freeze. Sarah, he croaked. I didn't mean to hurt you. She stood tall, voice ice-cold, but you chose to. You chose Claire, Ethan, money, over everything we had. David bowed his head, silent. Sarah turned away, feeling like she'd severed a piece of her past, but it didn't hurt as she'd feared. Instead, relief washed over her, like shedding armor too tight. Harper patted her shoulder after, you did great. They've got no way out. The trial came 4 months later, swift as a well-planned surgery. Ethan got 10 years for fraud, money laundering, and organized crime. David, as an accomplice, received 5 years probation and a $100,000 restitution order, the amount he'd drained from their joint account. Claire faced no charges, quietly leaving Seattle as news spread. But Lisa surprised Sarah most. She showed up at court, standing beside her, gripping her hand until it hurt. I'm sorry, Lisa whispered, eyes red. The FBI cleared Lisa after she cooperated, returning the $10,000 and detailing how David deceived her. Sarah hugged her, murmuring, "You're still my sister." In that frigid courtroom, she felt a spark, not justice, but healing. The case didn't end with her. Sarah's evidence spurred the FBI to widen their probe, uncovering 12 more military families targeted by Coastal Trust. Some reclaimed homes, others got restitution. Sarah received a letter from a Norfolk wife, "I've never met you, but you saved my family. Thank you." She read it, tears falling, but this time from joy. She hadn't sought glory, but knew her fire had lit the way for others. The trial was over. Ethan and David faced their consequences, Lisa was forgiven, and 12 military families found hope because of her. But in that moment, as the sunset painted the water red, Sarah didn't think about victory. She thought about freedom, a strange sensation, like breathing fresh air after being confined too long. 12 years of marriage to David, months of smoke and fire in Syria, and the storm of betrayal had passed, leaving a new Sarah, still scarred, but stronger than ever. She smiled, not because everything was perfect, but because she knew, from the ashes of her past, she could plant seeds for a future that was hers alone. The 39-year-old army doctor had saved lives on the battlefield, justice in the courtroom, and now, she would save her own heart. In the weeks after the trial, Sarah cleared the remnants of her old life. She finalized the divorce, a process as swift as a surgery she'd performed, cutting away what was no longer healthy to save the rest. David didn't fight it, sending only a brief text, "I hope you're happy." She read it, deleted it, and didn't reply. He was no longer part of her story. The Seattle house, once a vessel for their dreams, felt like a distant memory. She sold it without regret, though packing stirred fragments of the past, a mug David gave her for an anniversary, a photo from Lake Tahoe, a letter she wrote him from Afghanistan. She boxed them up, sent them to storage, and kept just one thing, her mother's wedding ring, a reminder that love, though fragile, was still worth cherishing. With the house money, Sarah bought a small home in Portland, Oregon, where pine forests and mist blended into the peace she craved. The house had 2 bedrooms, a wooden porch overlooking a valley, and a tiny garden for daisies, her mother's favorite flower. She left the Navy after 18 years, not from exhaustion, but to heal in a new way. Sarah took a job at a community health center, caring for those without insurance. She also led a support group for military spouses, sharing her story like a beacon. "We're not weak for being hurt," she said at the first meeting, voice warm. "We're strong for standing up." The women looked at her, eyes alight, and Sarah knew she'd found a new purpose. Her new life wasn't glamorous, but it brimmed with meaning. She adopted a gray cat, naming it Storm, for it came to her on a rainy day. Storm curled up on the couch during her morning yoga, slow stretches that steadied her breath. She learned piano, clumsily plinking notes, laughing when Storm leapt onto the keys, disrupting her. These moments, small but precious, were stepping stones through the dark. She no longer chased grand happiness, she found it in sunlight filtering through pines, in patients' laughter, in her own quiet. One autumn afternoon, while watering her garden, a package arrived. No sender's name, just the address of her Syrian camp. Her heart raced as she opened it, revealing a carefully wrapped painting, a desert sunrise, golden rays shattering the night, with bold yet delicate strokes. A note was tucked inside, Michael's handwriting, "Sarah, you were our light. Thank you for not giving up on us, or yourself." Sarah stood still, tears streaming. She remembered nights Michael sat with her in camp, saying little, but always a rock. The painting wasn't just a gift, it was proof she was never alone. She hung it in her living room, where morning light made it glow, a symbol of her journey from pain to hope. The biggest surprise came a week later, when Lisa called from Tacoma. "Sarah, can you come over?" her voice soft, almost scared. Sarah drove winding roads, questions swirling. Lisa met her at the door, eyes red, and led her to the living room. On the table were papers and a check. "I need to be honest," Lisa began, voice trembling. She explained that, after the trial, she'd quietly contacted a San Diego military family who'd lost their home to Coastal Trust. Using her own savings, Lisa donated $5,000 to help them rent a new place, in Sarah's name. "I can't undo my mistake," Lisa said, tears falling, "but I wanted to do something right, for you." Sarah looked at her, feeling an invisible wall crumble. She hugged Lisa tightly, whispering, "You don't need to make up for anything. Your family." In that simple room, Sarah felt a new spark, not from justice, but from love reclaimed. Driving back to Portland under a starry sky, Sarah thought of David, now a faint shadow with no power to hurt her. She thought of Lisa, Michael's painting, the patients she healed, and herself, the woman who thought she'd lost everything, but found more than she dared dream. She turned on the radio, an old song playing, and sang along, voice blending with the wind. Storm greeted her at the door, meowing, and Sarah laughed, scooping it up. "You know," she said, "sometimes losing a home helps you find yourself." She stepped inside, light from the sunrise painting flooding the room. Sarah stood there, no longer the betrayed wife, not just an army doctor, but a fire that had burned through darkness, leaving light for herself and others. She knew this wasn't the end, it was a beginning, and she'd walk forward, heart open, hands ready to build. Sarah Collins' story conveys a powerful message of resilience and renewal after adversity. Facing betrayal and loss, she refused to let pain define her, instead choosing strategic action and finding meaning by helping others. The lesson is clear: no matter how life knocks you down, you can rise, reclaim what's yours, and build a new future. Trust in your inner strength, seek reliable allies, and remember that every scar is proof you've survived. In life, when trust is shattered, let integrity and kindness guide you, for even in darkness, you can ignite light for yourself and those around you.